Hello everyone, I am Diamaya Packer and welcome to my presentation where I will be designing a memory enhancement intervention for college students. This presentation focuses on how cognitive psychology principles can be applied to improve memory retention and academic performance among college students. I chose this topic simply because many college students study for long periods but still forget information quickly, myself included. This project explores how cognitive psychology principles can improve memory retention through structured events. This project also focuses on two evidence-based learning strategies, spaced repetition and retrieval practice. For my literature review, I've done a total of 5 different studies. Study number 1 demonstrated that actively recalling information improves long-term retention better than passive review methods. The findings of this study show that students who use retrieval practice retain more information over time. This study also supported the idea that self-testing and active recall are much more effective than passive review methods. Study 1 reads as follows. Researchers examined how retrieval practice affects long-term memory retention. Students who self-tested retain information significantly longer than students who reread notes. Retrieval practice strengthened recall pathways in memory. This support includes self-quizzing activities in the intervention. Study 2. This study focused on the spaced repetition and the spacing effect in memory retention. Researchers found that reviewing information over spaced intervals helps students retain information much longer. This supports the intervention by showing that scheduled review sessions are more effective than cramming. This study consisted of 30 to about 40 college students, ages 18 to 25, randomly assigned into 2 groups, spaced repetition group and then the cramming group. The materials used were a list of 30 to 40 vocabulary words, psychology terms or foreign language terms, flashcards or digital flashcard apps such as Quizlet, pre-test and a post-test, delayed recall test, a timer, and then consent forms. Step 1, everyone took a pre-test to make sure that they did not know any of the questions on the test. Step 2, where both groups were broken up, group 1, spaced repetition, and then group 2, the cramming group. Group 1 had a 30-minute period to study over a 3-day course period. The same material is reviewed repeatedly across time intervals. Group 2, only one 45-minute session on day 3. After that, we go to step 3 where the students immediately test. After the final study session, both groups take the same recall test. The last and final step, or step 4, where they take a delayed recall test. A week later, students take another test to measure long-term memory. Now let's move on to study number 3. The third study explored how combining retrieval practice with spaced repetition improves academic performance. Researchers discovered that students who use both strategies together perform better on exams and remember information longer than students who use traditional study methods. The study also found that these methods improve confidence and reduce study-related stress because students felt more prepared over time. This research is especially relevant because my intervention combines both retrieval practice and spaced repetition to maximize memory retention and academic success. This study was done using some of the same participants, materials, and also procedures. The groups were just split off into 2 different groups, which were the experimental group and the control group. Now let's jump into study number 4, where students were broke off into 2 more groups, which consisted of the high cognitive overload group and the effective study habits group, which also contained independent variables. This study looked at college students' poor study habits and cognitive overload. Researchers have discovered that students often underestimate the amount of repetition required for long-term memory development, leading them to frequently resort to cramming. I am a bit guilty. The findings of this study showed that poor study habits increase stress, anxiety, and forgetfulness. However, structured learning techniques help reduce cognitive overload and improve information processing. Now let's move on to this last and final study, which focuses on metacognition, which refers to the awareness of one's own learning and thinking processes. Researchers found that students who monitored their learning progress and used active study strategies performed better academically. The study also emphasized that students often believe they understand information simply because it feels familiar after rereading, something that we might all be guilty of, even though familiarity does not equal true learning. Now let's move on to intervention overview. The intervention designed for this project is called the Memory Enhancement Program for college students. The purpose of the program is to improve long-term memory retention through evidence-based cognitive learning strategies. The intervention combines spaced repetition, retrieval practice, scheduled review sessions, and self-testing exercises. Students will be taught how memory works and how to organize study schedules more effectively. The main goal of this intervention is to improve memory retention among college students. Another goal is to reduce reliance on cramming and replacing ineffective study habits with evidence-based strategies. The intervention also aims to increase academic confidence and reduce stress related to studying and exams. By the end of the intervention, students should have stronger study habits and better long-term retention of academic material. The target population for this intervention were undergraduate college students between the ages of 18 and 25. This group was selected because college students frequently experience heavy academic demands that require strong memory skills. Many students struggle with balancing coursework, deadlines, employment, and personal responsibilities, which can negatively affect learning and retention. In addition, many students enter college without being taught effective study techniques. Because of this, they often depend on cramming and passive review methods, which don't end well in the long run. Methods used during this intervention include self-testing quizzes, flashcards, recall exercises, and repeated review intervals. Some materials used in the intervention include digital flashcards, applications such as Quizlet, study guides, progress tracking sheets, and online quizzes. These tools help students organize information, monitor progress, and strengthen long-term memory through repeated retrieval. The implementation steps reads as follows: introduce students to memory principles, train students on spaced repetition schedules, practice retrieval exercises weekly, monitor progress using recall tests, and the last and final step, the effectiveness of the intervention will be evaluated by comparing students' performance before and after participation in the program. Cognitive principles that guided my intervention were spaced repetition, retrieval practice, encoding, and consolidation, which we have talked about in depth throughout the PowerPoint. The effectiveness of the intervention will be measured using several assessment methods. Students will complete pre-test and post-test to evaluate changes in memory retention and recall performances. Weekly quizzes will also measure progress throughout the intervention. In addition, students will complete feedback surveys to describe their experiences, confidence levels, and perceptions of the study strategies. The research predicts that students using spaced repetition and retrieval practice will retain information more effectively than students using passive study methods. One of the most important things that I have learned during this intervention is that effective studying is not simply about spending more time reviewing information. Instead, the quality and structure of studying are extremely important for memory retention. This project also helped improve my research skills and understanding of evidence-based interventions. Overall, the project showed me how cognitive psychology can provide practical solutions that improve educational outcomes and student success. In conclusion, memory retention is a major challenge for many college students, especially when ineffective study habits are used. Research strongly supports the effectiveness of spaced repetition and retrieval practice as strategies for improving long-term learning and recall. The intervention presented in this project combines these two cognitive principles into a structured program designed to improve academic performance, study habits, and confidence among college students. Now on to my references. This slide contains the academic sources used throughout this project. These peer-reviewed studies and scholarly resources provided the research foundation for the intervention design and cognitive principles discussed in this presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed learning with me today.